Hello, I'm Ben Craven. I'm a volunteer for Edinburgh Tool Library, which is, well, it's like a library for tools. You can come here and borrow tools instead of buying something and using it once or twice. And we've also got a workshop that our members can use, and we get involved in community projects as well. And we're doing this as part of Fair Saturday, and the proceeds from this workshop are going to go towards Edinburgh Tool Library. I'm a great fan of using corrugated cardboard, and what we're going to do in this project is try to convince you that you can really make some quite neat, tidy things with corrugated cardboard. We're going to make a little stand for your phone that you can stand on, for example, if you're using it as in a Zoom meeting, or you can stand it like this for putting, if you've got a recipe showing on it, and then take a photograph of your beautiful creation later on. So I'm going to take you step by step through making this, and along the way we'll be learning some techniques which you can apply to other projects working in corrugated cardboard. Now, as soon as you work in corrugated cardboard, you'll learn that there are actually two kinds of it. There's single layer corrugated cardboard, where you've got two layers of paper and one corrugations, one wavy bit of paper inside, and this is the stuff you want to use. There's also double layer corrugated cardboard, which has got two layers of corrugations in it, and this is not what you want to use because it doesn't fold very predictably. And for this particular project, you're going to need a piece of cardboard that is big enough to take two pieces out of it. Now, you may want to vary these dimensions a bit depending upon the size of your phone, but one of them is a piece 7 centimetres across by at least 36 centimetres long. If you can make it a bit longer, it allows you to recover if you make mistakes, as we'll see later on. And the corrugations need to be running along this piece. And then the other piece you need is a piece with the corrugations running across it, and this one has got to be 10 centimetres that way and 21 centimetres that way. So I'm going to cut myself a pair of pieces like this out of this piece of cardboard. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that the edge of the cardboard is parallel to the corrugations. Now, on most bits of corrugated cardboard, there's going to be one side of the board where you can see the glue lines quite well, and another side where you can't. Now, this one is actually white on the other side. Lots of cardboard is brown on the other side, but there will be one side where you can see the corrugations. So that's what I'm going to do here, and I'm going to place my ruler so that it's exactly along the corrugations, and then just trim the edge of the cardboard. Okay, now when you're cutting cardboard, you don't want to go through it in one go. Make several light cuts. You'll get a better cut, and it's also safer. If something goes wrong, the knife will go into your finger more slowly. So I've got that edge parallel to the corrugations, and now I'm just going to make sure that this edge is at right angles to that one. So, and this is where a cutting mat is great. I can line it up, line that edge up with one set of lines on the cutting mat, line my ruler up with the perpendicular set of lines, and again several light cuts. Now, I'm cutting directly towards myself, which is fine because there is a lot of space after the end of the cut. The knife is not going to come off into mid-air. Now I'm going to cut the 36 centimetre long piece. Now this, let me check, measure twice, cut once, has got to be 7 centimetres wide. So I'm going to mark this with my knife. A little nick like that. It's much easier than marking with a pencil because you get a much more precise mark. And line my ruler up with those two little nicks. That, and again several light cuts that. Now I'm just going to make this trim to maybe a little bit more than 36 centimetres. I'm going to use the scale on the cutting mat again. 10, 20, 30, 35, 36. I'm going to cut it off about here. Okay, and there's my first piece of cardboard. Now, it's a bit easy for me because these two sides are so very different, but it's really difficult to remember which is the front side and which is the back side if they're both brown. So I would suggest also you just mark the bad side, the not showy side of the cardboard, because in my case I'm going to make a brown foam stand. Now let's cut out the other piece. So this piece has got to come with the corrugations running across it. It needs to be 10 centimetres wide, 21 centimetres long. Now I want these pieces to match up quite precisely, so I'm measuring with the ruler. But often the grid on the cutting mat is going to be good enough, and that saves you a lot of measuring. My nicks are so small that I can't see them. There we go. Again, there's a kind of spare space between the edge of the end of the cut and the edge of the table, so I'm safe. Lots of gentle cuts, and then we'll cut this to 21 centimetres. The length of this is less critical than the width, so I'm going to use the scale on the cutting mat. And when I'm lining up my ruler like this, I'm actually lining up the ends of the ruler, because if I make a little mistake at the end, it amounts to a small mistake in the middle. So let's just again measure twice, cut once, 5, 10, 15, 20, 21. Okay, so here are my raw materials. Now the next stage is so that we can, I don't know if you can see the edges on here, we can't see the corrugations, we've wrapped these edges. And the next stage is about creating the wrapped edges. So what we're going to do, the next operation, is to convert this into a piece like this, where we've taken away the top layer of paper and the corrugations. We've just got, if you like, paper flaps down either side. Now, this can go wrong, as you'll see. So I would really suggest that if you've got a spare piece of cardboard, you have a little practice before you have a go at this. And what I want to end up with is this middle strip to be exactly as wide as my long thin piece, which is 7 centimetres. So this is 10 centimetres, so I'm going to mark in 1.5 centimetres from either end, which will make the middle strip 7 centimetres. To line up my ruler with the marks I've made. Now, this is the bit that can go wrong, because what we're going to do is we're going to be trying to cut through the top layer of paper and the corrugations, but not the bottom layer of corrugations, and I'm sure you can guess what can go wrong. You cut through everything. So definitely it's worth practicing, and I can't guarantee that this will go to plan. Let's find out. So you can feel the rhythm of the blade going through the corrugations. It should be okay. Now what I'm going to do is try and remove the top layer of paper and the corrugations, and there's an element of luck here, and it depends a bit on your corrugated cardboard. If you're lucky, oh yes, if you're lucky you can do that, and most of it will come off in a one-er. If you're unlucky, it won't do that, and you'll have to scrape it off, and I find a ruler with a sharp angle at the bottom is a good scraping tool. And I'm just going to have to tidy this up by scraping. And just be careful. Rulers can have very sharp edges, and especially when they're new. When this one was new, when I first did this, there was blood everywhere. So that's one side. So far so good. Let me just check that I haven't gone too far. Right, sigh of relief, that one's okay. And now let's do the other one. My luck's in today. Working quite nicely. I can assure you it doesn't always do that. And also things do sometimes go wrong. So, where's the one I prepared earlier? On this one, for example, there's a little tear there, but in fact, this is going to be glued out of sight, and you can glue that tear back into position. So don't worry if you make little mistakes. On the whole, they're not going to matter too much. So here's one of my pieces now with the wrapping edges prepared. And I have to do the same also on the end of this piece. Now the length of the little flap I'm going to make here, it's not so critical as that one, because it doesn't have to match anything. So I'm just going to, by eye, I'm going to make sure my ruler's at right angles. I'm not going to worry exactly what distance that is. Oh. In fact, I would actually suggest if you've got a piece here which is plenty long enough, do this one first, because if it goes wrong you can just slice it off and do another one and you'll still have enough, and it can be your practice piece. So right, these two pieces are now prepared so that later on we can wrap these round to hide the corrugations. The next thing we're going to do with this one is to prepare it so that we can form this little shelf for the foam. So the first stage is we're going to end up with something like this, which has got 3 creases in it. One crease outwards to form the back of the shelf, another crease on the other side, or in the opposite sense, to create the front of the shelf, and a third crease in the original sense to create the bottom of the kind of little bracket that props it up. Now exactly where these creases go depends a bit about how big your camera is, because you want the foam camera to be able to poke over the top. So if I put my camera here, I can see that I want my first crease to be about there. What am I looking for? Now, corrugated cardboard, can I find my little sample that I showed you before? You can only crease it in certain places when you're doing creases along the corrugations. So if we want to bend this that way, we can only crease it here and here and here, kind of along the valleys of the corrugations as we're looking at it from this side. So I can see from the glue lines that there's a valley just here, and I'm now going to use a very useful piece of card modelling equipment. It's a dead biro, a biro with no ink left. I'm going to use that to burst through the paper on the top there, and now I can do a nice crease like that. And I'm just going to make, before I do anything else, just make sure that crease can be persuaded to go a little bit beyond the right angle. Now this is where it can go wrong. We've got to remember to now turn this over because we want to do a crease in the opposite direction for the front of the shelf. Now it doesn't matter exactly how big the shelf is, but you don't want to be worried about your phone falling off it, so just make your own judgment, and then again use any blunt instrument will do, but not a sharp instrument. You want to bend the edges of this fold down. Now we can bend that way, so now we've got two of our creases, and then finally we want the third crease, which is going to be, if you like, the bottom of the bracket, and that's not so important where that is. I'm going to do it there. And now we've got a piece which we can bend in to form our shelf. Now the next stage is to modify this a little bit. First of all, we want a gap in the shelf. This is where, if you've got a USB cable coming into your phone, that is a space for the plug. I'm assuming that your USB socket is in the middle of the bottom of your phone. If it's somewhere else, you might have to modify where you cut this hole. And we also don't want the bits of paper that are going to be level with the bits that make the shelf. We need to cut those away. So let's first of all cut away the bits of paper. So I'm going to line up my ruler with the crease and then make a cut there. Line up my ruler with the top crease and make a cut there. Do the same on the other side. Have to cut between them, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to line up my ruler with the edge of the card in the middle, the full thickness card, and then make a cut along like that. Now it's always much easier when you're cutting with a knife to see the beginning of the cut than it is to see the end of the cut, so I'm not going to try and do the entire cut. I'm going to do part of it and then turn it round and finish it like that, and that way we'll get nice crisp internal corners. And then the same on the other side. There we go. And now we need to cut out the hole for the USB cable, USB socket, USB plug. So this piece in the middle is 7 centimeters across, so its middle is 3.5 centimeters, and then 15 millimeters seems to be enough for the USB plug, so I'm going to go 7.5 either side of that. You may need to modify that. And if I line this up with the cutting mat, I don't need to make any more marks. I can just line up my ruler like that. And in fact, it's easy enough to judge that the ruler is straight. You can get it good enough just by eye, even without the cutting mat. And again, I'm going to start the cut, but not finish it. I'll do the other one as well. Now we do the cuts from the other end, like that, like that. And then we've got two shortcuts here and here. Now these are so short I think I can get away without using a ruler, but I'm still going to do them in two parts so I get a nice sharp internal corners. And with a bit of luck, that should come out. And now you can see we've got our little shelf assembly. So the next stage is now going to be to glue these two pieces together like that. And in gluing them together, we want to get this full thickness piece of card and this full thickness piece of card to be lined up perfectly on all edges. And we're going to glue, for the time being, just the top part. We're not going to glue that bottom part. Now for the glue I'm using white PVA glue, and top gluing tip is, if you're using your fingers to put the glue on, which is generally quite a good thing to do, use your little finger, because that way the fingers that you're actually later going to use to pick stuff up with don't get glue on them. And with glue it's always a judgment. You've got to put enough on, but you don't want to put so much that you spend all week waiting for it to dry. So it's really the edges that are important. It doesn't matter a great deal if there are dry spots in the middle, but you do want to stick around the edges, just make sure there are no lumps either. Right, and I'm just going to find something to clean that finger on. And then we're going to stick these together, and we'll have a few seconds to get them lined up. So it's quite easy. You don't have to hurry too much. Get those nicely lined up. Press that down firmly. And we're just going to wait for a minute or two for that glue to firm before the next stage, which is going to be gluing this part down, having bent that shelf into position. So just want to make sure that's nice and firm. So while we're waiting, I'll just say something else about corrugated cardboard. It's a bit, if you were thinking about painting it, it's a bit of a risk. It can warp. Big pieces of corrugated cardboard can warp if you paint them with water-based paint. I once thought, oh, I'll be clever and paint both sides and it won't warp. No, it still warps just as badly. I haven't actually tried using non-water-based paint, solvent-based paint. Maybe that will be fine. But when you've got a small thing like this, especially with two layers on it, and each piece of card is kind of restrained by the other ones, you maybe can get away with painting it, but I would be careful to do it in light coats so that you're not getting everything too wet. And I did actually varnish this piece, and it hasn't warped to any noticeable extent, and it'll just make it a little bit more durable and a bit more waterproof. I mean, one of the things about corrugated cardboard is it's remarkably strong, but it is soft and it's not watertight. Okay, I think we can now go ahead to now glue this bottom piece on. So same drill with the glue, a little finger. Smear it on. A lump there, which I'll take off, and then find something to wipe this on. And then the important thing here now is to form the shelf here, and we want it to be just have a slight slope on it so the phone is not going to slide off it. I'm just going to hold that down for a minute or two. So in my other job, or my job, I work at Glasgow School of Art. I teach product design engineering, and one of the things we do is teach students a lot about prototyping and a lot of corrugated cardboard work. Designers love corrugated cardboard as a way of prototyping. It's very quick. You don't need a workshop, you don't need safety glasses or ear defenders or anything like that, and you can try ideas out really quickly and easily with corrugated cardboard. Just wonderful stuff. Okay, let's cross our fingers and hope that's okay. So now we've got the front of our stand, and the next thing we're going to do now is wrap these edges which have got exposed corrugations using the paper flaps that we made before. So let's start at the top, and just going to try and establish a crease in this flap of paper at the back, so we get a nice crisp edge, and likewise I'm going to stand it up and establish a crease in it like that. And then some glue. Maybe a bit much. Bend that over and then gently squash it flat with my fingers. I've slightly overdone the glue here. You can see it oozing out, and there's always a dilemma about, do I try to clear that up, in which case I might mark the rest of the cardboard, or do I just leave it? And I'm going to just try and wipe the excess off, hope for the best. Okay, so there's one of those flaps glued down. Clean my finger again. And so having done that, we can no longer see the corrugations on the top of the phone stand. Now let's do the same with the ones on the sides. I just do really need to clean my hands properly here. I mean, that's what trousers are for, if you're wearing the right kind of trousers, but unfortunately I've got the wrong trousers on. So, we're fine now, but yeah. So I'm going to, don't know if this is still in shot, it's convenient to do this on the edge of the cutting mat because of the shelf. I'm just going to bend that one up into shape, and over here bend that into shape. I think I'll thank you. Take a chance here. I'm not going to take a chance. I'm going to glue them one at a time. I'm going to be patient. And a bit less glue than I used last time, I think. Make sure it comes off the edge. Still I've overdone it, so slightly down there. I always think it's important when you're making things and you're worried about whether they look perfect, is to remember that no one is ever going to look at it as closely as you're doing now. There we go, so now that's the top part of that is wrapped up, and you can't tell that it's made of corrugated cardboard. We're now going to do the same here and here. I'm going to glue out. point I realise I forgot to crease these up, so let's just hope we get away with that. There we go. So just give those a second or two to dry, and you can see we've now got the front of the stand is pretty much complete. All we need to do now is to bend the support at the back. Now, if you've ever worked with wood, you'll know that you have to think when you're working with wood which way the grain is running, and it's the same in corrugated cardboard. You have to think about which way the corrugations are running. We've bent this corrugated cardboard parallel to the corrugations. If you're bending across the corrugations, because the corrugations in this big piece are running that way, if you just try to bend it, you'll probably get a very ragged bend. It doesn't want to bend anywhere in particular. What you need to do is tell it where you want to bend it by creasing it. And if the piece isn't too wide, the easiest way to do that is to take your ruler, put it where you want the bend, and then press it down. And now this is going to bend where we want it to. Now we actually want this to bend the other way, but I'll bend it that way to make it nice and flexible, and then bend it the other way to form the base. And then we want another similar bend about here. So let's do that one. And I'm going to use the cutting mat to make sure everything's lined up nicely at right angles. And create a bend like that. And then we have to figure out how long this piece needs to be in order to end up glued to a suitable part of the back. And we need to have a little flap for gluing. So I actually think that's about right as it is. If you started off with a longer piece, you may need to trim that off. And so to make the flap for gluing, I'm going to again crush the card like that. And the idea is that we're going to fold that flap underneath so that it's not too visible. But I think what will also help to stop that flap being too visible is actually to trim the edges away like that, and then that way those edges are much less visible from the front. And then all we have to do is figure out what sort of angle we want this to be at. So something like that. Again, I could have used a nozzle on this, of course, but it always seems to block. Put our glue on there. And I'm just going to guess, this is not really critical at all. I'm just going to glue it on like that. Press it as well as I can, it's a bit hard to get at. And there we have a phone stand. Okay, and because we've wrapped these edges, most of it looks like it hasn't been made of corrugated cardboard. It looks much neater than that. So it's great to have been part of Fair Saturday, and I hope this has stimulated a love affair with corrugated cardboard in you. Maybe I'll make another video with another project, and it will be great to see you again in the future. So meanwhile, goodbye from Edinburgh Tool Library. If you're ever in Edinburgh, look us up, come and visit us, and you can also find out about us online.